Hey guys, tonight we're drifting into the shimmering heart of Constantinople at dawn, where the city stirs awake under a sky streaked with golden light. You hear it before you see it. The clatter of hooves on cobblestone streets, the splash of water as fishmongers prepare their stalls, and the faint call of seagulls echoing across the Bosporus. The year is somewhere in the 11th century. But honestly, time here feels like a dream, hazy, ethereal, and a little disorienting. The Great Strait glitters like a ribbon of silver, separating Europe from Asia, and the salty breeze carries the scent of spices, incense, and freshly baked bread. You imagine yourself passing through the massive Theodosian walls, though to be honest, you'd probably already have been robbed, lost, or both by the time you got this far. Still, we're going to let you explore, because that's the magic of bedtime stories. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're awake enough, drop a comment with where in the world you're listening from, and what time it is right now for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe light a candle for that soft, flickering glow, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself on the Maze, the grand avenue that cuts through Constantinople like an artery, paved with massive marble slabs worn smooth by centuries of footsteps. Around you, merchants are unfurling vibrant carpets, arranging delicate glassware, and polishing ornate jewelry. You can almost hear the clink of gold coins changing hands. Ahead, the bronze horses of the hippodrome catch the first rays of sunlight, their metallic hides gleaming like living creatures. Historians still debate whether Constantinople smelled more or manure, but either way, the air here is thick with possibility. To your left, the Hagia Sophia looms, its enormous dome seeming to hover in midair, defying gravity and logic. Priests in flowing robes glide silently across its threshold, preparing for morning prayers in a space where whispers become echoes and echoes become legends. As you wander deeper into the city, you feel the pulse of daily life quickening. Bakers slide steaming loaves from stone ovens. Children chase each other with wooden swords, and women in colorful veils haggle over the price of fresh figs. But beneath the cheerful bustle, there's an undercurrent of intrigue, as if every shadowed doorway conceals a secret meeting. People huddle in small groups, voices low, discussing imperial politics, the latest military campaign, or most tantalizingly rumors about the Empress herself. Here's a reality check. You, a stranger from another time, would stand out like a sore thumb. Your clothes, your accent, your wide-eyed wonder at everyday sights, all would mark you instantly as an outsider ripe for exploitation. Luckily, we're moving unseen, so you get to observe without fear. That's the beauty of bedtime history. All the sights, sounds, and scandals, without the risk of ending up in a Byzantine prison. You emerge into the Augustean, the grand plaza that serves as the heart of imperial power. Here, Constantinople truly flexes its muscles. Towering columns topped with statues of emperors past, elaborate fountains spraying jets of crystal-clear water, and the constant parade of officials in silk robes and jeweled headpieces. Imperial guards stand at attention, their armor gleaming in the morning light, spears held rigidly at their sides. These aren't just decorative soldiers. They're the eyes and ears of the emperor, always watching, always listening. And somewhere beyond the imposing gates of the great palace, a sprawling labyrinth of gilded halls, secluded gardens, and mosaic-covered chapels, the Empress waits. Her face graces coins and mosaics throughout the city. Her name is invoked in prayers and curses alike. But what no one dares to whisper in this public square is that she writes letters, secret letters, passionate letters penned on scraps of parchment, sealed with wax, and smuggled past the very guards who think they know her every move. A fascinating detail. Byzantine scholars believed that ink made from oak galls held mystical properties, as if words written with it could pierce through lies and reveal hidden truths. Imagine love letters composed with such ink-dark, shimmering, charged with the power to change destinies and topple empires. The city itself seems to be in on the secret. Every rustle of silk curtains in a palace window, every murmur of fountains in hidden courtyards, every creak of a ship's hull in the bustling harbor, they all feel like co-conspirators, passing along whispers of forbidden romance. You pause by a marble basin where water gushes from the mouths of carved lions. Servants dip clay jugs, merchants splash their faces, and a group of young nobles lounge nearby, their laughter tinged with the arrogance of those born to power. And through it all, you notice how people's eyes are constantly drawn to the palace, that great stone beehive of plots and passions, as if its very walls might suddenly part to reveal the Empress's deepest desires. The Empress, draped in purple and pearls, is anything but free. She's hemmed in by protocol, surrounded by spies, her every word and gesture analyzed for hidden meanings. Yet somehow, impossibly, she's found a way to pour her heart onto parchment-reckless, beautiful, potentially ruinous words. And soon you'll find yourself following the twisting path of her correspondence, watching as she weaves longing and duty into a tapestry as complex as the city itself. For now, you linger in the square, lulled by Constantinople's morning symphony, the chanting of monks, the haggling of merchants, the clash of practice swords in a nearby barracks. Somewhere within those palace walls, a quill scratches across parchment, and if you listen closely enough, you can almost hear the Empress's heart beating in time with each carefully chosen word. As the sun climbs higher, casting long shadows across the forum, you feel the weight of history pressing down. This city has seen emperors rise and fall, armies march and retreat, faith tested and reborn. And yet, amidst all the grand sweep of politics and war, it's the small human moments that truly capture your imagination. The stolen glances between lovers separated by class, the whispered jokes passed between market stall owners, the quiet acts of kindness that go unnoticed by the chroniclers of great deeds. You drift past the hippodrome, where chariots will soon thunder around the track, stirring the crowd into a frenzy. But now, in the early morning hush, you can almost hear the echoes of past triumphs and tragedies. How many emperors have been crowned here? How many rivals have been humbled? The very stones seem to vibrate with memory. A group of scholars hurries past, their arms laden with scrolls, heading towards the imperial library. You catch snatches of their conversation debates about theology, astronomy, the nature of the soul. Constantinople isn't just a center of political power. It's a beacon of learning, preserving knowledge that will one day help rekindle the flame of curiosity across Europe. As you wander, the scent of incense grows stronger. You've reached the Church of the Holy Apostles, its 5 domes reaching towards heaven like outstretched hands. Inside, mosaics glitter in the dim light, depicting saints and martyrs with eyes that seem to follow you. This is where emperors are laid to rest, their tombs a reminder that even the mightiest must eventually bow to death. But our story isn't about death. It's about life, love, and the risks people take when their hearts overrule their heads. As you leave the church, a gust of wind carries a scrap of parchment past your feet. For a moment, you catch a glimpse of flowing script, a hint of perfume, before it's swept away down an alley. Was it one of the Empress's letters? A reply from her secret beloved? Or just another of the city's countless mysteries? The sun is fully up now, and Constantinople pulses with energy. In the markets, silks from China shimmer next to spices from India and furs from the frozen north. Languages from across the known world mingle in the air: Greek, Latin, Arabic, Armenian, and a dozen others. This is truly the crossroads of empires, where cultures collide and combine in ways that will shape the future. As midday approaches, you find yourself back near the great palace. The guards have changed shift, but their vigilance never wavers. And yet, somehow, love letters continue to slip past their watchful eyes. Perhaps there's a sympathetic servant, a corrupt official, or maybe the Empress herself, has devised some clever system of codes and hiding places. You lean against a sun-warmed column, watching the ebb and flow of palace life. Eunuchs in elaborate robes hurry on mysterious errands, while off-duty Varangian guards fierce Norsemen who serve as the emperor's elite bodyguards carouse in a nearby tavern. And through it all, the city holds its breath, waiting for the next scandal, the next miracle, the next turn of fortune's wheel. As our journey through Constantinople draws to a close, you're left with a kaleidoscope of impressions: the glitter of mosaics, the thunder of hooves, the rustle of silk, and always, always the whisper of secrets. This is a city where history is written in grand gestures and tiny rebellions, where love can topple dynasties and faith can move mountains. Somewhere in the labyrinth of the palace, an empress sets down her quill, seals a letter with trembling hands, and entrusts her heart to fate. And as you drift off to sleep, maybe you'll dream of Byzantine intrigue, of forbidden romance, and of a city where even the stones have stories to tell. So close your eyes, let the sounds of modern life fade away, and for a moment, let yourself be carried back to a time when Constantinople was the center of the world, and love letters could change the course of history. You slip through a side gate into the sprawling palace complex, where the air suddenly shifts from noisy bustle to hushed reverence. Here, the stones seem to gleam more brightly, polished by centuries of slippers and sandals, while the scent of incense lingers like a clinging veil. You are no longer in the marketplace. You are inside the very stomach of empire, where marble walls digest whispers and secrets before they can reach the outside world. At the center of this hive of ritual stands the empress. She is wrapped in layer after layer of silk, brocades embroidered with golden thread, and jewels heavy enough to give her permanent shoulder pain. You watch her glide across the mosaic floors, each step deliberate, every motion carefully measured, as if even her posture has been negotiated by councils. Her attendants bustle around, smoothing hems, adjusting veils, carrying trays of honeyed figs or cups of watered wine. To see her is to be reminded that in Byzantium, power was theater, and the empress was its leading actress. Mainstream history tells us that Byzantine empresses were not mere decorations. Many wielded astonishing influence. Women like Theodora, wife of Justinian in the 6th century, had steered imperial policy with a will of iron. Our empress, centuries later, inherits that legacy, yet she still feels the sharp edges of her gilded cage. The court may sing hymns in her honor, but each hymn is another lock, each bow another invisible chain. Byzantines had a curious obsession with colors of clothing as coded language. Purple, of course, was reserved for the emperor and his family, but saffron yellow suggested ascetic piety, while deep green could signal loyalty to certain chariot factions of the hippodrome. Imagine trying to pick an outfit every morning, knowing your sleeve color might spark a riot no pressure. Our empress, wrapped in imperial purples and gold, cannot even flirt with such subtleties. Her entire wardrobe is essentially shouting, "I am the state." And yet, beneath all that embroidered silk, she is still a woman who longs for something outside of ritual. That's where the letters come in. Imagine her in the quiet recess of her private chamber, slipping a parchment across her lap while a handmaid pretends not to notice. Her stylus scratches faintly as she leans in close, writing in a looping, coded script that only one pair of eyes is meant to read. Historians still argue whether these letters were truly romantic or simply political. Were they outpourings of passion for a lover? Or were they carefully crafted alliances, dressed up as affection, intended to manipulate powerful men into loyalty? The debate lingers because the line between personal longing and political survival in Byzantium was razor thin. An empress might write, "I burn for you," and mean both, "I miss your arms," and "I need your army." You drift closer, watching her pause mid-sentence, her head tilted slightly as if she hears footsteps beyond the chamber door. Guards shuffle outside, their armor clanking softly. The Empress breathes, dips her pen again, and keeps writing. The candlelight glimmers on her rings, casting specks of fire across the parchment. Her daily rituals stretch beyond letter writing, of course. You see her attend liturgies in the palace chapel, where priests chant in low voices, and the smell of beeswax candles fills the air. You follow her as she supervises embroidery workshops, where noblewomen labor over altar cloths stitched with pearls. Even her meals are choreographed, each dish a blend of Roman tradition and Eastern flavors, honeyed wine, spiced lamb, garlicky greens. She eats little, yet every bite is watched by servants trained to spot poison before it reaches her lips. Reality check. You wouldn't last long trying to keep up with her schedule. The dawn prayers alone would break you. Never mind the constant formal audiences, the layers of etiquette thicker than her cloaks, and the daily recitation of genealogies. By mid-morning, you'd be sneaking out for a nap behind a pillar. Still, as you shadow her day, you sense the constant friction, the heavy stage of empire versus the delicate flutter of her secret heart. Her gaze lingers a moment too long when a young general passes through the courtyard. Her fingers drum absently against the armrest when a poet recites verses in her honor. She listens, but her mind is elsewhere, chasing the next sentence of her forbidden letter. You glide along the marble corridors, past mosaics glittering with saints and emperors, past tapestries showing lions and griffins. Every surface of the palace screams permanence, yet every sigh from the Empress reveals impermanence, the fleeting spark of human longing that even marble cannot smother. By nightfall, the court grows quiet. Lamps flicker in the hallways, casting shadows like restless spirits. The Empress dismisses her attendants, one by one, until only a single trusted servant remains. Then, in that hush, she unfolds a fresh sheet of parchment. Her hand trembles slightly as she presses ink to surface, as if she knows that with each word she gambles her crown, her reputation, and perhaps her life. You watch, leaning over her shoulder, as the first line of longing curls across the page. Outside, the city sleeps, but inside these palace walls, a heart beats too loudly, and no veil of silk can silence it. You trail her steps into the labyrinth of the palace, where walls of marble and mosaic seem to whisper their own secrets. The corridors stretch endlessly, their floors so polished you can see faint reflections of torchlight wavering like ghosts. You notice how the palace is built not only for grandeur, but for control each turn, each doorway, each set of gilded doors, narrowing the flow of who may approach and who must remain distant. For you, wandering here feels almost dreamlike. Guards stand at intervals, statuesque and silent, their spears catching the glow of oil lamps. Eunuchs glide past with scrolls tucked under their arms, whispering to one another in low, careful tones. Even the air smells of watchfulness, incense, and candle wax, masking the tension that hangs like smoke. Mainstream history records that the Great Palace of Constantinople covered nearly 200,000 square meters, a sprawl of chambers, courtyards, chapels, and secret gardens. To walk, it was like wandering through a city within a city. But as you drift deeper inside, you sense that its real purpose was less about architecture and more about surveillance. Every alcove could hide a listener. Every column could cast a shadow long enough to cover a spy. Here's a quirky tidbit. Byzantine architects were especially fond of echo chambers rooms, designed so that the softest whispers carried unnaturally far. Useful for ceremonies, sure, but also suspiciously handy for a jealous emperor who wanted to overhear a conversation without entering the room. Imagine trying to sneak a love letter past walls that are basically tattletales. And yet, in these halls, that's exactly what happens. Somewhere within this maze, the Empress presses parchment against her lap, concealing her words under folds of brocade, while attendants think she's sketching embroidery patterns. You watch her slip the finished page into a sleeve, waiting for the exact right moment when the eyes of the court shift elsewhere. Historians still argue whether palace life suffocated its residents with ritual or allowed them surprising freedoms in private alcoves. Some insist that the strict ceremonial schedule audiences, banquets, endless liturgies left no time for mischief. Others point out that the sheer size of the palace provided hiding places, corners of relative privacy, where glances and letters could change hands unnoticed. Both may be true, depending on the courage or recklessness of the participants. You drift beside the Empress as she approaches the Chrysotriclinos, the golden reception hall. The room glitters with mosaics of Christ, emperors, and angels, all watching from the walls with solemn eyes. She bows her head as the emperor himself enters, his robe stiff with pearls, his crown heavy with gems. His expression is unreadable, but you sense the undercurrent. His court is his theater, and every member is both actor and audience. The Empress smiles dutifully, but her thoughts, you know, are elsewhere, inked into that folded letter hidden beneath her sleeve. Reality check. You, dear listener, would not survive 5 minutes in this chamber. The etiquette alone would break you. Stand at the wrong time, bow too shallowly, or, heaven forbid, sneeze during the emperor's speech, and you might find yourself reassigned to a monastery in Cappadocia by sunrise. Luckily, in this bedtime wander, you can yawn openly and still keep your head. The corridors press on. You notice mosaics of hunting scenes, saints with halos that seem to glow in the lamplight, marble pillars veined like frozen rivers. But the most telling detail is not the decoration, it's the silence. No one laughs loudly here. No one tells a story without lowering their voice. You realize the palace walls themselves enforce discipline. And yet, against all this, the Empress still manages her rebellion. A flicker of her eye toward a trusted eunuch, a faint brush of her hand as she passes a servant, a slip of parchment exchanged like a breath. The walls may be watchful, but they cannot stop a heart from leaping at the sight of its beloved's handwriting. You pause at a window overlooking the city. The Bosporus glimmers below, dotted with ships carrying spices, silks, and rumors. From here, the city looks peaceful, as if nothing dangerous could ever happen in its streets. But within these palace walls, danger is as constant as candlelight, and the Empress's letters are small sparks, threatening to ignite a blaze. As she retreats to her chamber, you hear the faint rustle of parchment again, tucked safely in its hiding place. Somewhere out there, beyond the walls, another pair of hands waits to receive it. And as you follow her shadow down the corridor, you realize the palace is both prison and accomplice, its marble cold, its silence complicit, its walls holding secrets they will never confess. The palace's very design seems to whisper of intrigue and hidden passions. Corridors twist and turn, leading to unexpected chambers and secluded alcoves. You imagine the Empress's heart racing as she slips through these passages, her forbidden letters clutched close to her chest. The weight of tradition and duty presses down, but in these stolen moments, she defies it all. As night falls, the palace takes on a different character. Shadows lengthen, and the whispers grow even softer. You watch as the Empress makes her way to a small private chapel. Here, under the watchful gaze of saints and angels rendered in gleaming mosaic, she kneels. But her prayers, you suspect, are not solely directed heavenward. As she bows her head, her hand moves to a loose stone in the wall, and you see her slip a folded piece of parchment into the hidden cavity. The air in the chapel feels thick with secrets. You wonder how many other missives have been hidden here, how many whispered confessions these walls have absorbed. The Empress rises, her face a mask of serenity, but her eyes betray a flicker of excitement. She has once again outwitted the watchful palace, found a way to nurture her heart's desires despite the constant surveillance. As you follow her back through the winding corridors, you reflect on the strange duality of her existence. To the world, she is the pinnacle of Byzantine power and piety. Her every public move is choreographed, her words carefully measured. And yet, in these hidden moments, she is simply a woman in love, risking everything for the thrill of forbidden correspondence. The night deepens, and the palace grows quieter still. You drift past the imperial apartments, where even in sleep, the emperor and empress maintain a careful distance. Their marriage is one of state, not of passion. But as you pass the empress's chamber, you catch a glimpse of her seated at a small writing desk, a candle flickering beside her. Her pen moves swiftly across the parchment, and you can almost feel the intensity of her emotions pouring onto the page. You wonder about the recipient of these letters. Is it a foreign prince, promising alliance and escape? A dashing general, offering adventure and true love? Or perhaps someone closer to home, a member of the court who has captured her heart despite the danger? The possibilities swirl in your mind, each more intriguing than the last. As dawn approaches, you find yourself back in the great hall. The first rays of sunlight filter through the high windows, catching the gold leaf of the mosaics and setting them ablaze. The palace begins to stir, servants moving silently to prepare for another day of imperial ritual. But now you see it all differently. Behind every placid face, you imagine a world of hidden desires and secret correspondences. The empress emerges, resplendent in her mourning finery. To all appearances, she is the perfect consort, ready to play her part in the grand theater of Byzantine politics. But you know her secret now. As she passes a young courtier, their eyes meet for just a moment too long. Is this her paramour? Or merely another player in the complex game of palace intrigue? As the day's ceremonies begin, you feel yourself drifting away from the scene. The voices fade, the colors blur. But the image of the empress torn between duty and desire, navigating the treacherous waters of power and passion, lingers in your mind. Her story, like so many others hidden within these palace walls, will remain forever unfinished, a tantalizing glimpse into the hearts that beat beneath the weight of empire. And so, as sleep finally claims you, you carry with you the echoes of whispered confessions, the rustle of secret parchments, and the bittersweet knowledge that even in the most gilded of cages, the human heart will always seek its freedom. The scriptorium settles into its hush, quills stilling, sandals fading down corridors, a candle fretting against its own pool of wax. By the narrow window, the scribe draws a small bundle from a cushion's hem and frees a strip of parchment no wider than his palm. This isn't royal decree or illuminated manuscript. It's quiet stock, the kind that can disappear inside a sleeve or a basket of herbs without making a fuss. He lays out his kit with affectionate precision. Reed pen for bold strokes, goose quill trimmed to a hair for the tiny work, a knife to shave the nib, a bit of pumice to make the surface obedient, a cloth to blot. The ink is iron gall galls and vitriol cooked into a brown-black. Mainstream fact: by the 12th century, papyrus has mostly vanished from monastic scriptoria. Medieval letters ride on parchment and vellum because those skins hold ink cleanly and survive handling. Walnut ink, the earthy favorite of many copyists, waits in another jar, but tonight he wants the bite of iron gall. It sinks and darkens as it meets air, as if the page agrees to remember. He squares the sheet, breathes once, and begins. The hand is Carolingian minuscule, that tidy script perfected so books and letters could be copied at a monastic pace. The letters look calm. The meaning will not be. He writes small and a shade slanted, a concession to secrecy. A smile flickers. He has found a joke about Saint Benedict and beehives and tucks it in the margin like a wink. Yes, even scribes margin doodle. Give him a modern planner, and he'd reward himself with a prey. Sticker for surviving Compline. Metaphor does the heavy lifting. Olive branch equals hope. Dew on grass equals forgiveness. A candle guttering at matins equals weight. Feast days double as clocks. On the eve of St. Agnes sounds pious to a censor, yet names, to one reader, an exact interval. Titles stand where names would betray. The abbot is our shepherd, which pleases every listener. The beloved is the keeper of herbs, which to strangers means gardener, and to her means the woman who takes his letters in the shadow of a certain cloister. Quirky tidbit. Monastery gossip insists some brothers draft a first layer in milk and write over it with regular ink. Warm the sheet by a brazier, and the hidden script blooms back like frost on a window. May be true, may be a refectory legend. He chooses a safer trick, rules a faint line with onion juice, so the page is secretly lined. Under candlelight, it vanishes. Tilt it toward the flame, and a pale rail appears. Low lighting is makeup for parchment. He slows the rhythm. Pacing is part of the message. The hive endured, he writes, though the storm chastened me. She will know which hive, which storm, which gate. 3 words become a map. A drowsy novice would never notice. Real ciphers are a liability if found, so he uses puzzles that look like piety. Down the left margin, he lets an acrostic spell a devotional word to most eyes and a meeting hour to one. Inside a paragraph, the Latin letters quietly count caritas, charity, totals the days since the last exchange. On the outside, he addresses the sheet in a dutiful, boring hand, then adds the tiniest flourish only she expects. A curl on the A that bends into a dove, a joke hiding inside obedience. Materials finish the choreography. He dusts the damp strokes with pounded chalk so the ink dries flat. He folds the page once and again, a neat bifolium easy to palm. A short sprig of lavender goes inside, both perfume and message. Remember, wax warns in a clay cup, no lead seal tonight. Those are for decrees that wish to be seen. He drops a small coin of beeswax and presses a ring that bears a cross. To anyone else, it's devotional. To her, a cross means the orchard. Certainty steadies his hand. The monastery trains scribes for psalters, chronicles, and letters. Cloisters teem with brothers who can spot a forged hand at 20 paces. He writes against them no flowery openings, no extra blessings in the closing. He lets the last letters of lines drift a touch upward, so the page breathes like a meadow with a breeze passing through, not like a sermon carved in stone. He even plants a deliberate smudge below 1E, his private signal that the page is truly his. Historians still argue whether a scribe would hazard this labor for love alone, or whether such letters braided longing with rebellion. They also argue over the small stuff, iron gall or walnut in private notes, pure Latin, or the occasional vernacular phrase to tag a faction. Debate is their sport. Tonight he tips the wax, stamps the ring, and decides the question in practice. Only the courier remains. Options are ordinary. A laundress with a basket of linens. A novice with a satchel of herbs, whose smell bosses every scent. A quiet lay brother, whose silence is both vocation and wall. He chooses herbs. Gatekeepers are famously bored, but seldom tear apart bundles. If anyone asks why so much, he can cite stomach ailments. Monastic indigestion. The one problem the rule never solved. You can bow or you can burp, but not both. He rises. The folded page slips into the green tangle and becomes another small weight among stems. The satchel moves. The cell exhales. The letter is heavier, now not in wax or lavender, but in intention. It leaves like a leaf catching a breeze, pointed at one heart only 2 people can see. He cleans the nib, wipes the blade, caps the ink. The window throws a mesh of shadow across his hands, and you think of the monastery's larger meshes, rules, prayers, whispers, those echo chambers of stone, and how even careful nets miss what learns to move like air. The candle steadies. Outside the window, night lays another quiet layer over the cloister. Somewhere, hidden in herbs, a sprig presses against a folded page and carries a sentence that smells faintly of remembrance toward the gate. You drift through the corridors of the Byzantine palace, a silent observer in a world where every whisper carries weight. The air is thick with intrigue, and you can almost taste the ambition on your tongue. Courtiers materialize like apparitions, their movements as calculated as a game of chess. Conversations ebb and flow, always stopping a heartbeat too soon, the universal sign that something of import has just passed by. The eunuchs are the first to catch your eye, the living membranes of the palace. They glide through doorways and manage the delicate dance of who waits and who enters. Some hold the highest offices in the empire, the paracoronos, who guards the emperor's sleep, the protovestiarios, who tends the imperial wardrobe. Their gazes connect like invisible threads, weaving a web of silent communication. One pauses, nostrils flaring at a passing scent, while another makes a precise mark on a wax tablet. You've never felt such envy for a simple writing tool. Beyond this human tapestry, the Varangian guard stands like a forest of steel and muscle. Their axes gleam, not for show, but for deadly purpose. Their eyes, blue as distant fjords, scan the halls with practiced indifference. You ponder how one might slip a forbidden note past such vigilance. Perhaps disguising oneself as a coat rack? It's not your most brilliant scheme. You muse that bribing them with sweet pastries would only result in confiscated treats and unchanged expressions. The silentieri move through the crowd, their very presence a command for quiet. These keepers of order need no words. A single look can quell a rising murmur. You feel the brush of their attention, and suddenly every door hinge seems to remember its manners. Whispers abound of a secret police, though historians still debate their existence. The Logothetes II Dromu, master of posts and foreign intelligence, certainly has eyes and ears beyond the empire's borders. But does his reach extend to the intimate corners of palace life? The question lingers like old incense unanswered. Regardless, the effect is palpable. Everyone here has made noticing things their vocation. A curious detail catches your attention. Courtiers dabbing scented oils not for vanity, but as a subtle language. Costa speaks of gravity, rose of gentleness, spikenard of wisdom. Your nose detects a hint of mastic, and you realize it's a signal between two eunuchs. Watch the kitchen entrance. This olfactory code, unwritten but understood, reminds you that in this world, even perfume is politics. Your gaze follows a laundrywoman as she accepts a basket of herbs with practiced nonchalance. Among the fragrant leaves, a letter lies folded small as a secret prayer. The palace's attention seems to slide past, then coil back, like a cat feigning sleep while counting passers-by with a twitch of its tail. In a side courtyard, men of letters trade compliments like rare spices. A poet praises a bishop's sermon. The bishop commends the poet's Greek. It's a dance of mutual usefulness, observed by a strolling eunuch who pretends fascination with a mosaic. You find yourself watching his reflection in the tiny tiles, understanding that in the palace, the indirect view often reveals the most. You're acutely aware of your own clumsiness in this realm of whispers. Your attempts at stealth are as subtle as a bear in a china shop. If there were grades for hushed tones, you'd surely be awarded the position of court cymbal player. A bleary-eyed clerk from the chancery rubs at fingers stained with ink. He's the sort who can divine the emperor's mood from the tilt of the seal or identify a scribe by their mistreated alphas. He gives a slight double take as the laundrywoman passes, not at her, but at the herbs she carries. Rosemary in this season speaks of more than seasoning. It hints at intrigue. He files the observation away, a magpie hoarding shiny facts for future use. Gossip flows through the palace like water through aqueducts, purposeful and directed. It travels via stable boys watering horses, through icon painters privy to whispered confessions, through professional mourners who flit from house to house. This is networking in its most refined form, where owing someone a story is as valuable as owing them gold. You follow the breeze into a long gallery where sea air plays with heavy curtains. A slender figure waits, all poise and discretion, the kind of person whose influence is measured by the gaps in others' schedules. This is your promised courier, betrayed only by the steadiness of his gaze. The laundry woman pauses, adjusts her shawl, and in that blink, the letter changes hands, then sleeves, then disappears into the courier's belt. The exchange is so swift, you only catch it because you're cheating floating unseen, and because you've learned to watch the herbs, not the hands. Debates still rage among scholars about the intelligence networks of palace women. Were they formal systems or piggybacked on existing channels? Evidence is scant a handful of scandals, confessional records, a stanza of cutting verse. But here in this hall, one truth is clear. Those expected to be invisible often see the most. The women who change linens know which guests weep in private, which ones lie sleepless, which push away full plates. The men who trim wicks know the length of every late-night conversation. The city writes its secrets on the hands that tend it. At the far end of the gallery, a court clerk hovers, too interested in floor patterns to be truly studying them. He's the type forever scenting promotion, mentally rehearsing speeches that begin with feigned reluctance and end in false humility. He misses the letter's passage, but sees enough to know he's missed something, which, to an ambitious footnote, is almost as good as seeing everything. The Cletterologion of Philathios, that ancient manual of ranks and ceremony, still governs the flow of bodies through these halls. It dictates who walks before whom, who sits nearest which threshold, who overhears what conversations. It's more than etiquette. It's the blueprint of power. Today's movements honor that old diagram even when pretending it's mere tradition. In a nearby chapel, a pious secretary drips wax onto water, reading ripples in defiance of clerical disapproval. He seeks knowledge of a journey's length. The wax forms islands. He smiles, then remembers to look contrite. Does it work? Who can say? Does it comfort? Undoubtedly. And all the while, just rooms away, a very real message makes its clandestine journey. The courier slips into a service passage redolent of wood smoke and clean linen. A silentiarius glides by, nodding as if counting motes of dust. The Varangian at the far end stifles a yawn, then stands straighter to compensate. A eunuch turns his head a fraction. Not quite yes, not quite no. The entire palace balances on such minute gestures. And you, drifting in the wake of whispers, realize that the court's watchfulness is not just habit but pride. Its denizens hone their attention like others might practice music or calligraphy. The thrill lies not in catching secrets, but in almost catching them, in being the sort of creature that can smell rosemary and wonder. If you lived here, you too would learn to listen to curtains, to answer unasked questions, to notice when time carries more than just its own scent. As the herb basket returns to the laundry, innocent once more, the corridor exhales its held breath. Somewhere ahead, a garden waits, and a sealed message already means what it will mean. You follow the courier's steady stride, counting doors, counting heartbeats. The watchful court counts with you, and for once, you're grateful. Counting is soothing. It means you're still here, still moving, still threading through this tapestry of attention, as neatly as a letter folded to fit the palm that will unfold it and change the course of empires. You wander now into the hushed corridors of the great cathedral, where the air hangs heavy with incense and whispered prayers. Candles flicker in alcoves, casting dancing shadows on frescoed walls that tell tales of saints and sinners alike. In a secluded chapel, you spy a group of clerics huddled in fervent discussion, their voices low but urgent. The topic? Not the nature of Christ's divinity or the proper veneration of icons, but something far more earthly, the latest scandal involving one of their own. Mainstream fact: the church's influence permeated every aspect of medieval society. Bishops weren't just spiritual leaders. They were kingmakers, diplomats, and often the most educated men in any given room. Their word could topple monarchs or ignite wars. Yet for all their thundering against the sins of the flesh, many found themselves entangled in webs of desire as intricate as any tapestry adorning their cathedrals. Historians still debate whether these clerical indiscretions were viewed as mortal sins or merely inconvenient truths to be swept under ornate rugs. The pulpit rang out with condemnations of lust, yet whispers in taverns and marketplaces told different tales. You could almost hear the irony creaking like the ancient hinges of the confessional door, where penitents knelt to bare their souls while their confessors harbored secrets of their own. Quirky tidbit: some believed that carrying a saint's relic could not only protect one's body, but also shield one's misdeeds from prying eyes. Picture a bishop slipping a fragment of bone into his robes before a clandestine rendezvous, as if the blessed object might blur the lines between sacred duty and profane desire. Theology pressed itself even into the language of forbidden love. Passionate letters borrowed freely from Scripture, transforming psalms into barely disguised odes to earthly beauty. To call one's lover "my blessed martyr" wasn't just poetic license. It was a genuine compliment, suggesting a devotion strong enough to withstand the fires of both hell and public scrutiny. Secret meetings became private vigils, stolen kisses, Holy Communion. Reality check: you'd likely doze off during a medieval sermon, not from boredom, but from sheer exhaustion. Hours of Latin chanting, call and response prayers, and theological arguments dense enough to make even the most devout mind wander. You'd find yourself nodding against a cold stone pillar while around you, the faithful debated the finer points of transubstantiation with surprising vigor. As the cleric's hushed conference breaks up, you notice one lingering behind. His eyes dart toward a side door where a hooded figure waits. The glance speaks volumes. Another missive has been passed, another rendezvous arranged. Yet moments later, this same man kneels before the altar, his lips moving in what appear to be earnest supplications for divine mercy. It's a strange duality. You sense he believes in both his vows and his passions, as if heaven and earth must somehow find a way to coexist within his conflicted heart. You follow him out into the cloister, where sunlight paints intricate patterns through stained glass onto weathered stone. Monks tend to herb gardens, their quiet industry a counterpoint to the whispered intrigue you've just witnessed. But even here, in this haven of contemplation, theology and desire intertwined like the very vines climbing the monastery walls. Every plant, every carved detail carries layers of meaning. The rose is both Mary's purity and love's thorny path, the apple both temptation and redemption. And yet, caution reigns. In their clandestine correspondence, these men of the cloth rarely invoke the names of saints or saviors directly, too dangerous if discovered. Instead, they craft elaborate codes. The bell at vespers might signal a secret meeting, the third station of the cross, a hidden alcove for whispered confessions of a decidedly unorthodox nature. Sacred imagery becomes a cloak for human longing, theology twisted into a language of desire as intoxicating as sacramental wine. Scholars continue to argue whether this blending of the sacred and profane was a subversive act, or simply an inevitable consequence of a world saturated in religious symbolism. Could one truly separate the yearnings of the flesh from the aspirations of the spirit in an age where every thought, every action was viewed through the lens of faith? Some academics posit that these forbidden exchanges were almost liturgical in their own right, an uncanonized gospel of human passion, never openly acknowledged, but never fully erased from the margins of history. The cleric pauses by the baptismal font, dipping his fingers in the holy water and crossing himself with a practiced gesture. You notice his reflection in the rippling surface, fragmented and distorted. In one moment, he appears the very image of piety and authority. In the next, you glimpse the man beneath the robes conflicted, yearning, all too human. Both versions are true, both reflected in waters that refuse to settle into a single comfortable truth. And you, a silent observer to this unfolding drama. Feel the weight of a world where desire must don the mask of devotion, where love letters masquerade as prayers, and where those who preach virtue by day may well court scandal by night. Light joke number 1. If medieval dating apps had existed, profiles might have read, God-fearing, well-versed in Latin, secretly enjoys flagellation, for purely spiritual reasons, of course. You'd swipe right just to see if they came with their own choir of cherubim. Light joke number 2. Incense was so thick during High Mass that you could fake a mystical vision just to escape early. Forgive me, Your Grace, but St. Jerome just told me to go home and contemplate in solitude. Light joke number 3. Confessing impure thoughts to your local priest was a risky business. There was always the chance he'd sigh, mutter, same, and suggest you both skip ahead to the penance. Theology and desire twist around each other like twin serpents, inseparable, dangerous, and utterly captivating. And in that charged space between dogma and passion, another letter is penned, another rendezvous planned. The ink flows as naturally as a prayer, the words a litany of longing, whispered onto parchment that will travel paths far more perilous than any pilgrim's road. As night falls and the cathedral bells toll for Compline, shadows deepen in corners where whispered vows mingle with stifled sighs. The air grows thick with unspoken confessions, and you can't help but wonder, in this realm where the sacred and profane dance so closely, who can truly judge where devotion ends and desire begins? The question lingers, unanswered, as candles gutter in their sconces and the last echoes of chanted psalms fade into the gathering dark. You shadow her steps into a long colonnade where breezes from the Bosporus shuffle curtains like the pages of a book. The Empress walks slowly, her veils drifting, and you sense the letter already out of her hands, gliding toward its destination. But who waits at the other end? Whose eyes, whose hands, whose pulse will quicken at the words tucked inside time and sealed with a palm? Byzantine history gives us no shortage of candidates. Empresses across centuries tangled themselves, politically or romantically, with generals, courtiers, and scholars. Zoe Porphyrogenita, for example, married 3 times, each union brimming with intrigue and suspicion of poison. Theodora, centuries earlier, had risen from an actress's stage to a throne beside Justinian. It was not impossible for a woman at the heart of empire to take lovers, though the stakes were sharper than any blade in the Varangian guard's armory. Historians still argue whether such affairs were matters of the heart or of survival. A general's affection could mean his troops' loyalty. A poet's devotion could mean flattering verses that bent public opinion. The debate smolders in manuscripts. Were the Empress's letters love poems or tactical memos dressed in yearning? You lean in, reading over her shoulder in memory, recalling phrases she wrote. The lantern kept, though the wind corrected me. Romantic, yes, but also tactical, hinting at a rendezvous, an agreed plan. Could her lover have been a general stationed across the straits, waiting for signals? Or was it a scholar poet, whose verses laced philosophy with honey, whose eyes offered her escape from marble corridors? Poets at court often survived by flattering emperors with verses that were, frankly, a bit cringe by modern standards. Your crown shines brighter than the sun, your toenails glimmer like pearls. Imagine having to rhyme something with imperial tax reform. Yet between the lines, poets sometimes tucked sly metaphors that only a chosen listener could decipher. Perhaps our Empress's chosen man was one of these clever tongues, willing to risk exile for the thrill of coded couplets. Reality check. You'd probably be a terrible candidate for her affection. You can't swing a sword like a general. You can't compose 12-line hexameters in Greek while fasting, and you'd faint the first time a eunuch glared at you. Still, you can eavesdrop, safe in the knowledge that your worst consequence is nodding off mid-story. The Empress herself seems torn between possibilities. You watch her pause by a statue of Aphrodite, worn smooth by centuries of reverent touches. Her lips curl, almost smiling, and you sense she is remembering not just one man, but the feeling of being seen beyond silk and ceremony. She touches the statue's base, fingers brushing marble worn by anonymous worshippers, and you realize the irony. Pagan goddess of love lingering in a Christian palace, a reminder that desire has never cared much for theology's borders. Historians whisper guesses. Perhaps it was a general like Michael Sellos, brilliant yet vain, who mingled politics with scholarship. Perhaps it was a younger courtier, eyes wide with ambition, but heart too reckless. Or perhaps the letters were spread across years and men, each phrase a new entanglement, each fold of parchment carrying a different name disguised in metaphor. The records do not say. That silence itself is tantalizing the archive's deliberate hush, as dangerous as any scream. If she'd had a crush on a baker, at least the love letters would have come with free bread rolls, which honestly feels like a better deal. A poet might woo her with metaphors, comparing her to the moon, but given palace lighting, she'd probably prefer being compared to a well-trimmed oil lamp. Imagine explaining to the emperor, "No, dear, I was writing to our general only about military lanterns, not personal lanterns." Good luck with that. You walk with her back toward the inner chambers, and you feel her mind racing. She knows the letter is out, knows its course cannot be undone. Somewhere, a pair of hands scarred from war, or ink-stained from writing, or calloused from some other craft, will unfold it. That person is both her risk and her refuge. In the quiet of her chamber, she leans against a window, watching the ships drift below, sails like pale wings in the dusk. Perhaps he is on one of them, waiting. Perhaps he reads already, lips curving into a secret smile. You feel the electric thread that stretches between them, taut and invisible, strung tighter by every guard, every priest, every wall that seeks to cut it. And so the Empress waits, not for theology's answer or for court ritual, but for the faintest reply. A second parchment folded into time, a coded phrase murmured by a servant, a poem tucked into a hymn. Desire here is not only a fire, but a system of signals, as intricate as the city's aqueducts. And you, trailing behind her, realize the whole palace is tuned like an instrument to catch the faintest vibration of her secret heart. The identity of the Empress's lover remains a tantalizing mystery, a puzzle that has confounded historians and romantics alike for centuries. Was he a battle-hardened general, his armor gleaming with the reflected glory of countless victories? Such a man could offer not just passion, but protection as shield against the ever-present threats that lurked in the shadowy corners of the Byzantine court. Or perhaps her heart belonged to a silver-tongued poet, whose words could paint worlds more vibrant than any mosaic adorning the palace walls. In his verses, she might find solace from the crushing weight of imperial expectations, a brief respite where she could simply be a woman in love, not an empress burdened by the fate of an empire. The stakes of such a liaison were impossibly high. For the empress, discovery could mean disgrace, exile, or even death. For her lover, the consequences could be equally dire. Yet the allure of forbidden love, the intoxicating thrill of secret rendezvous and coded messages, might have been worth any risk. Consider the political implications of her choice. A general as a lover could sway the loyalty of entire armies, potentially shifting the balance of power within the empire. A poet or scholar might influence public opinion through carefully crafted verses or treatises, subtly shaping the narrative of her reign. Even a humble craftsman or merchant, if chosen as her confidant, could provide valuable insights into the mood of the common people intelligence, as precious as any military secret. You imagine the Empress carefully weighing each possibility, her mind as sharp as any strategist's on the battlefield. Every potential lover would bring different advantages, different dangers. A young courtier might offer passion and devotion, but lack the experience to navigate the treacherous waters of imperial politics. An older statesman could provide wisdom and stability, but perhaps at the cost of the fiery romance she craved. As you follow her through the winding corridors of the palace, you notice how her gaze lingers on different men. Does her eyes soften when they fall upon the grizzled captain of the guard, his face etched with the stories of 100 campaigns? Or does she blush faintly when a particular scribe passes by, his fingers stained with ink that could just as easily write love poems as official decrees? The whispers of servants and courtiers provide no clear answers, only more tantalizing hints. Some swear they've seen her slip a folded note to a visiting diplomat from a distant land. Others insist that she spends far too much time in the company of a particular religious advisor, their theological discussions perhaps masking more earthly concerns. In the end, the true identity of the Empress's lover may forever remain a secret, lost to the mists of time like so many other Byzantine mysteries. But perhaps that's for the best. In the uncertainty, in the endless possibilities, lies a story far more captivating than any single truth could be. As night falls over Constantinople, you watch the Empress retreat to her private chambers. The letter she sent earlier still weighs on her mind, you can tell. Will it reach its intended recipient? Will it be intercepted by prying eyes? The tension is palpable, a living thing that seems to pulse in the very air around her. You realize, as you drift off to sleep yourself, lulled by the distant sounds of the city, that the identity of her lover matters far less than the act of love itself. In a world of rigid hierarchies and suffocating protocol, the Empress has carved out a space for passion, for vulnerability, for the simple human need to be truly known by another. And isn't that, in the end, the most rebellious act of all? You descend a hidden staircase that seems to lead behind reality itself, into a realm where light filters sideways and dust motes dance like obedient snowflakes. The Imperial Library unfolds before you, its walls lined with armaria wooden cabinets housing countless volumes. Book chests rest like slumbering guardians at the ends of long tables. Unlike the boisterous throne room, this sanctuary whispers with the creak of leather bindings and the soft sigh of settling parchment. The courier's passage skirts one edge of this hallowed space, offering a perfect refuge for letters seeking anonymity amidst a sea of pages. Your gaze follows a scribe whose quill moves with the reverence of a prayer balanced on a knife's edge. The nib glides, the page drinks, and the lamp bears silent witness. Fresh gray strokes of iron gall ink darken to black, as if each completed sentence takes a breath. By the 9th century, Byzantine scribes had perfected a compact, swift script called minuscule, conserving precious parchment and accelerating the copying process. This innovation ensured the survival of countless Greek authors. Here, Homer's epics murmur alongside Sophocles' tragedies, while medical treatises unfurl their intricate diagrams and saints' lives flow like careful rivers. The air is thick with the scent of glue, wool, and the faint, woody aroma of aged parchment. A palimpsest catches your eye, a sheet of parchment scraped clean, its older text a ghostly presence beneath new words. An ink recipe whispers beneath a sermon like a shadow, the echo of a former life struggling to be heard. Thrifty scribes sometimes wash sheets with milk or lemon water before reusing them, transforming this library into a repository of layered conversations. Tilt a page toward the lamp, and you might hear last year's whispers. As a clerk shifts the sheet, letters meant for oblivion flicker once before resuming their slumber. Across from the scribe, a bespectacled monk, his eyes magnified by crystal lenses in copper frames, counts quires with a bone folder. His expertise extends to every die in parchment, able to discern a sheep's origin from a single scratch. At his feet, a cat dozes atop a coil of twine, the library's esteemed mouser and second most valued employee after the elusive keeper of the chain cabinet key. The feline sentinel wakes, blinks, deems the scene unworthy of attention, and resumes its supervisory duties with the gravitas of a diminutive, furry prefect. Scholars still debate whether Constantinople boasted a single, continuous imperial library or a constellation of collections palace chambers, patriarchal stacks near Hagia Sophia, and private treasuries linked by a network of scribes and stewards. This distinction matters, as it maps the potential hiding places for dangerous texts and identifies those who held the keys. Tonight, such academic quibbles fade into insignificance. You stand in the city's memory vault, and its door has cracked open just a hair wider. You pass a cabinet housing books bound in rich crimson, secured with bronze clasps, their titles stitched onto parchment flags. A chained shelf keeps the most coveted volumes in gentle captivity. A wax tablet propped nearby bears a simple message: return keys. Whether policy or plea, its meaning remains ambiguous. A nearby clerk absently rubs his ink-stained fingers' permanent gray tattoos, resistant to even the most vigorous scrubbing, before catching himself and avoiding contact with his robe. The librarian on duty wears the expression of a man who has uttered "we close at sunset" countless times, yet still believes in its efficacy. He touches each book as he passes, not in inventory, but in greeting. His favorites reveal themselves through the unconscious curl of his fingers. When a courier from the service passage slips in with practiced nonchalance, the librarian's raised eyebrow speaks volumes. State your business, and I already know it, conveyed in a single gesture. The faint scent of time, barely discernible beneath glue and vellum, causes the librarian's nose to twitch once, as if cataloging aromas were part of his duties. The time-wrapped letter is not destined for these shelves, and therein lies the danger. Libraries safeguard two categories of texts: those they proudly display and those they pretend not to possess. While one ledger records loans of psalters and homilies, another nameless and without a designated shelf tracks pages, merely advised against. Code for "we will feign destruction after securing 2 copies." Here, secrecy is simply another classification system, and discretion a binding style. Photios, the 9th century patriarch, compiled a bibliotheca of summaries and critiques, spanning hundreds of works. Some, already rare in his time, proving that Byzantines were not mere custodians, but active reviewers, excerpters, and debaters. His spirit lingers in every marginal "see also," and every precise frown at sloppy grammar. Today's librarian is a descendant of that tradition, cherishing a well-crafted index almost as much as a stirring sermon. The courier waits as a scribe changes nibs, an elaborate performance of scraping, testing, and dignified shrugging. The letter requires only a moment of privacy, which libraries provide effortlessly. A cough from the librarian, a feline yawn, a page turn mimicking a distant door's closure, all conspire to mask the transfer from palm to sleeve, sleeve to belt. The librarian observes, mentally files the incident, and looks away with the practiced indifference of one who prefers books to people and order to confession. You follow another scribe into a side room where damp sheets hang like laundry, freshly bound volumes drying under weights. The air is thick with the almost sweet, almost sour scent of glue. A brazier and small frame for sizing threads occupy one corner, reminding you that even books begin life with weaving. A low bench holds a collection of broken seals, glittering like hard candy. Among them, you spot a palm frond impression, the Empress's mark without her name, already a specter among specters. Here, the politics of preservation conduct their silent work. A page insulting the wrong dignity becomes a palimpsest. A poem delighting the right ears earns 3 copies and a new binding. An overly specific confession is excused from the record. A miracle with compelling narrative bones is promoted to standalone status. Selection may sound gentle, but it wields power with velvet paws. The librarians navigate the fine line between smoke and memory, sometimes choosing to inhale the latter and exhale the former. Some scribes maintain sample books, concertinas of alphabets and decorative capitals clipped from worn manuscripts, used like color swatches to select the appropriate style for a commission. A letter masquerading as piety demands a sober hand. One impersonating law requires density. To vanish within a prayer book, it must adopt a modest, devout appearance. Writing dons disguises more comfortably than courtiers, and with far less discomfort. You pause at a narrow window, tasting salt on the air. The Bosphorus glimmers like polished steel beyond. Out there, ships exchange lantern signals. In here, lanterns become metaphors, and metaphors become maps. The courier has vanished, a thread pulled through fabric, leaving only the faintest seam visible to those who know to look. You imagine him crossing a courtyard, skirting a chapel, then melting into a knot of servants where gossip flows as efficiently as grain. Historians continue to debate whether librarians frequently colluded in concealing compromising texts, or if such tales are merely romantic notions we harbor about courageous readers. Evidence exists to support both views. Marginal warnings scratched out, but legible under raking light. Erased names reappearing when a page is warmed over a brazier. Inventories that mention a volume once, and then never again. In a city repeatedly sacked and sanctified, both scenarios ring true. Before you romanticize life in this sanctuary, remember, copying demands a forgiving back, resilient eyes, and patience that could persuade a storm to abate. You'd likely last mere minutes before adorning a margin with stick-figure Varangian guards, earning banishment for crimes against proportion. Attempt to pet the cat during delicate ruling, and you'd find yourself exiled to the broom closet without delay. Yet it is here that the city breathes between the lines. A monk pricks a page to guide ruling. A clerk tallies quires. A cat erases an inconvenient sentence through strategic lounging. Within these cabinets lie lives narrower than this room, yet longer than these shelves. For a copy made here will outlast scandal, rumor, even empires. The Empress's letters may be ash by dawn, but a scribe who glimpsed one line, who remembered one metaphor, might smuggle its cadence into a hymn, a chronicle, the pause before a prayer. Memory is stubborn. It learns new disguises. The lamp flickers. The librarian trims it with a tool shaped like a question mark. The wick brightens, causing the gold tesserae and a tiny icon of the archangel to flare as if touched by an unseen breath. You think of the Empress's lemon-ruled lines, a rosemary tucked into time, of a palm pressed into wax, of how fragile a page is against axes and laws and echoes, and how, in rooms like this, fragility learns stubbornness. You ascend the stair once more, fingers dusty with felted quiet. As you step back into the corridor, the palace briefly seems louder, brasher, less certain of itself. Behind you, the door closes with the sound of turning parchment. Ahead, somewhere between gardens and water, a reply is already taking shape in another's careful hand. You follow a winding path through fragrant gardens, where the air is heavy with the scent of roses and jasmine. The palace grounds unfold before you, a tapestry of green, punctuated by splashes of color from carefully tended flower beds. Fountains murmur softly, their gentle music a counterpoint to the distant hum of the city beyond the walls. Here, in this secluded paradise, time seems to slow, and the cares of the world fade away. The gardens of the great palace were renowned throughout the empire, a testament to the power and wealth of the Byzantine rulers. Terraced slopes cascaded down towards the sea, offering breathtaking views of the Bosphorus. Peristyles and pavilions dotted the landscape, providing shelter from the sun and intimate spaces for conversation. The air was thick with the mingled scents of cypress, citrus, and herbs, a heady perfume that intoxicated the senses. Gardeners moved through the grounds with quiet purpose, their practiced hands shaping nature to imperial will. They pruned and planted with the precision of artists, creating living sculptures from hedges and topiaries. Vines were trained to climb trellises, forming leafy canopies that offered respite from the heat of the day. In the herb gardens, neat rows of thyme, rosemary, and sage release their aromatic oils with each passing breeze. A secluded alcove beckons, half hidden behind a screen of flowering shrubs. A marble bench, cool and inviting, waits in dappled shade. This is not a place for secrets, exactly, but rather a space that encourages discretion. Here, conversations naturally fall to whispers, and even the most mundane exchange takes on an air of significance. You can almost see the ghosts of past visitors, their heads bent close in earnest discussion. Historians still debate the true purpose of these garden retreats. Were they simply pleasant spots for relaxation, or did they serve a more practical function as informal meeting places where the business of empire could be conducted away from prying eyes? Some contemporary accounts speak of idle whispers in the gardens, hinting at intrigue and conspiracy. The truth, as always, likely lies somewhere in between. The gardens were not without their whimsical touches. It was said that on special occasions, rosewater was added to the fountains, filling the air with a sweet, ethereal fragrance. Another tale speaks of silver strips hung in the trees to attract nightingales, their melodious songs providing a natural soundtrack to garden strolls. Whether true or merely fanciful embellishments, such stories speak to the magical atmosphere that pervaded these spaces. As you wander deeper into the garden, you become acutely aware of the subtle dance taking place around you. A woman passes by, her basket filled with freshly cut herbs. A eunuch stands in a doorway, his posture a study in calculated nonchalance. Nearby, a young page practices his letters, his voice a soft murmur, barely audible above the splash of water. Each figure moves with purpose, yet all maintain an air of studied casualness. You are not alone in your observations. A man approaches along a winding path, his eyes fixed on the ground as if lost in thought. He carries a scroll tucked under one arm, the very picture of a scholar at leisure. Yet there is something in the set of his shoulders, the way his gaze flicks periodically to his surroundings, that speaks of a military background. He chooses his seat with care, positioning himself with a clear view of the surrounding area. Of course, your own attempts at such a subtlety would be laughably obvious. You'd probably trip over your own feet, trying to appear nonchalant, or start humming a hymn off-key in a misguided attempt to blend in. The garden's delicate choreography would be lost on you, leaving you as conspicuous as a bull in a china shop. The atmosphere shifts subtly as a new figure enters the scene. The Empress glides along a nearby arcade, two attendants following at a discreet distance. Her face is partially obscured by a veil, but her bearing is unmistakable. In her hands, she cradles a prayer book, its presence both shield and prop. The attendants settle themselves on a nearby bench, producing needlework from seemingly nowhere. Their faces are masks of bland concentration, the perfect foil for any conversation that might take place. In this rarefied atmosphere, communication becomes an art form. A pause by a particular tree, a subtle adjustment of clothing, even the way one's fingers move during a blessing, all can convey volumes to those who know how to read the signs. It's a language as intricate and nuanced as any spoken tongue, yet one that leaves no trace for prying eyes to discover. The exchange between the Empress and the scholar-soldier is a masterclass in this silent language. References to psalms and saints' days become a cipher, mapping out future meetings. Innocuous comments about the beauty of the gardens serve as coordinates, pinpointing locations with surgical precision. To the uninitiated, it would sound like nothing more than pleasant small talk. But for those fluent in this secret tongue, it's a conversation laden with meaning. As the sun begins to dip towards the horizon, the garden prepares for evening. Lamps are lit along the arcades, casting a warm glow over the paths. The day's silent drama draws to a close, its players dispersing to their various roles. No physical letters have changed hands, no incriminating documents exist, yet messages have been sent and received with perfect clarity. You make your way towards the exit, marveling at the intricate dance you've witnessed. The garden has served its purpose, not just as a place of beauty, but as a living, breathing language all its own. It has kept faith with those who know its secrets, offering a sanctuary where words can be spoken without ever being uttered aloud. As you pass the familiar palm tree, its fronds rustling gently in the evening breeze, you're reminded of the wax seal that first drew you here. The garden has woven its spell around you, initiating you into a world of hidden meanings and veiled gestures. Tonight, you've spoken a language older than empires, one that thrives in the spaces between words. And as you step back into the bustling world beyond the garden walls, you carry with you the knowledge that sometimes the most profound conversations are those held in perfect silence. You follow the smell of salt and pitch toward the sea gate, where the palace presses its marble ribs against the Bosporus. Here the water carries not only fish and foam, but rumors, messages, and entire careers wrapped in cloth. Ships bob at anchor like tethered gulls, their hulls painted with tar that shines like wet obsidian. Creaking timbers and clattering rigging compose the harbor's hymn, and every syllable seems to offer cover for secrets. The Byzantine navy and merchant fleets were lifelines of empire. Grain from the Black Sea, spices from the Levant, silks from Agiol all poured through these waters. The same channels that fed Constantinople also fed its gossip. Couriers could ride the imperial post on land, but water-quick, forgetful, and shifting was often the safer road for words. A small boat nudges the quay, its sail folded like a tired wing. A sailor hoists a basket of herbs, legitimate cargo for palace kitchens, and you notice how rosemary and thyme conceal more than seasoning. It takes little imagination to picture a letter tucked between bundles, moving as naturally as wind through rigging. The emperor's seal, pressed with a laurel leaf, would look devotional to any passerby. Only one woman on the far shore would know that laurel means, "Await me by the cypress grove at midnight." Byzantine sailors often painted eyes on the bows of their ships, a superstition meant to help vessels see danger ahead. Some painted eyelashes for good luck, others a fierce squint to scare off spirits. Imagine his letter hidden beneath oregano, riding in the belly of a boat that itself stares boldly forward, as if daring the Bosporus to blink first. Reality check. You would not last 5 minutes on one of these ships. Seasickness would claim you before the vessel even cleared the harbor chain. Your great contribution to naval logistics would be leaning over the side and feeding the fish. Your sailor nickname would immediately become the Pale One. If asked to hoist a sail, you'd end up tangled in ropes like a fly in a spider's web. The courier melts into the harbor crowd, vanishing among traders, hawking amphorae of olive oil and baskets of dried figs. A scribe in ink-stained robes checks manifests at the customs post, scratching names onto wax tablets while pretending not to notice bribes, disguised as inspection fees. Behind him, a priest blesses a newly arrived ship, sprinkling holy water on its bow while muttering prayers against storms and pirates. The harbor is chaos painted in routine, and in that chaos a single folded parchment can slip through like a fish in a school. Historians still argue whether maritime messengers served as an official intelligence system or whether most were freelancers' captains. Merchants, pilgrims, even street performers paid to slip a sealed scrap into foreign hands. Some records suggest a semi-formal spy network called the Cryptia monitored such traffic, but other evidence shows that private letters rode as stowaways on trade ships, blessed more by luck than by bureaucracy. A seagull wheels overhead and caws as if it has just discovered the secret itself. Below, dockworkers laugh at the omen, toss the bird a fish head, and then forget it. The city has seen too many secrets to keep track of one more. But you, drifting unseen, know the value of that parchment tucked between herbs. A heart, a promise, perhaps even a dynasty hanging by a thread of ink. You lean against the quay, imagining the other shore. Galata glimmers faintly, lanterns bobbing in the dusk. Perhaps his beloved waits there, pacing by a garden wall, ears pricked for a whispered password. Perhaps she lights a candle of her own, placed in a window only he will recognize from the palace battlements. Byzantium is not only a city of domes and mosaics. It is a city of signals, of codes written in light, smoke, and whisper. Sailors believed mermaids carried messages for lovers. Some claimed to have seen scrolls tied to their tails. Were they lying? Almost certainly. But it adds a certain charm to imagine the emperor's words escorted by a mermaid guardian across starlit water. The courier vanishes into a tavern by the docks, where oil lamps flicker above rough tables, and songs in a dozen tongues weave together. Here, a letter can pass from pocket to pocket without anyone noticing, hidden among cups of strong wine and knuckle bones rattling like pebbles. You sense the parchment move again, tucked into another sleeve, another hand, until it is almost more legend than paper. Reality check again. You'd probably announce yourself instantly in this tavern by ordering the weakest ale, please, and then asking for directions to the nearest bathhouse. You'd be tossed out before finishing your olives. Still, as you hover in this harbor cacophony, you sense the truth. Letters live only if they move. The palace guards them. Religion censors them. Courtiers intercept them, but water carries them. Every wave promises both peril and possibility, each ship a gamble, each port a new chapter. Above, the emperor leans from his balcony, the Bosporus a golden ribbon beneath the setting sun. He cannot see the letter now, but he trusts the sea's discretion, its habit of swallowing more dangerous things than ink and paper. Somewhere out there, the letter nestles inside a wineskin. A ship creaks, and love rides the current. And you, lulled by seabird cries and waves lapping stone, feel the city's pulse slow, as if even Constantinople hums a lullaby when parchment sails on water. As night falls, the harbor's rhythms change. Torches flare along the quays, casting dancing shadows on water that seems to breathe with secrets. The daytime bustle gives way to a different kind of activity, furtive, whispered, cloaked in darkness. This is when the real messengers emerge, those who deal in information more valuable than gold. A hooded figure slips from shadow to shadow, pausing briefly to exchange a small package with a sailor leaning casually against a mooring post. No words are spoken. A nod, a coin passed palm to palm, and both melt back into the night. You wonder what news travels in that bundle. A battle lost, a rival's weakness discovered, or perhaps simply a lover's plea. The Bosporus itself seems alive with possibility, its dark waters reflecting the countless pinpricks of light from ships and shore. Each lantern could be a signal, each ripple a code. You imagine messages written in disappearing ink, scrolls weighted with lead to sink if discovered, words passed through a chain of trusted hands across legs of treacherous sea. In the distance, beyond the harbor mouth, larger ships wait at anchor. These are the true arteries of empire merchant vessels laden with silk and spices, warships bristling with catapults and Greek fire. But even these giants of commerce and war play their part in the dance of information. A captain might carry a diplomatic pouch alongside his cargo, or a galley slave might whisper news heard in a foreign port to his fellow oarsmen. As the night deepens, you drift back toward the palace, where candlelight flickers behind latticed windows. In chambers of marble and gold, decisions that will shape the fate of nations are being made. But those decisions rest on fragile foundations, scraps of parchment that have braved storm and pirate, spy and censor, to reach their destination. You pause by a small shrine near the water's edge, where fishermen leave offerings for safe passage. Among the shells and dried flowers, you spot a tiny scroll, half hidden. A prayer? A confession? Or perhaps another link in the endless chain of messages that binds this sprawling empire together. The lap of waves against stone becomes a lullaby, the creaking of ships a gentle snore. Even secrets must sleep, and as your eyes grow heavy, You feel the weight of all the unspoken words that have crossed these waters. Empires rise and fall, but the Bosporus remains, carrying whispers and dreams on its ageless tides. In your last moments of wakefulness, you see a lone figure standing at the water's edge, tossing something small into the current. As it sinks beneath the surface, you wonder what tale it carries, what lives it might change. Then sleep claims you, and you drift away on your own sea of dreams, where every wave whispers a story and every ship sails laden with possibility. You drift through the palace corridors, leaving behind the bustle of the courtyard. The scent of incense and perfume grows stronger as you approach the harem wing. Here, the air is thick with whispers and the rustle of silk. Lamps flicker behind ornate screens, casting intricate shadows on the walls. Attendants move quietly, carrying trays of sweets and combs, their hushed conversations a constant undercurrent. Contrary to popular belief, the Byzantine harem was not a den of sensual delights, but a secluded world of noblewomen, wives, and daughters. Their influence, though subtle, was profound. These women orchestrated marriages, forged alliances, and often wielded more power than any official messenger. The harem was the hidden pulse of the palace, its rhythms felt throughout the empire. You pause near a group of women hunched over their embroidery. Golden thread glimmers against deep blue silk as their needles dance, but their tongues move even faster than their hands. A story about the latest sermon transforms into a jest about a clumsy guard, which then becomes a murmur about a eunuch's suspicious behavior. You realize that in the harem, listening is an art form. Every comment is a lure. Every laugh conceals a hook. Scholars still debate whether these women were prisoners of protocol or key players in Byzantine politics. Some argue their seclusion robbed them of agency. Others contend it honed their skills in the subtle arts of influence, memory, and rumor. As you watch from behind a carved column, you see both sides of the argument unfold. These women trade information like merchants bartering silks. Did you know that hairdressers were some of the most valuable informants in the harem? They stood behind noble heads, weaving elaborate styles while their ears collected every morsel of gossip. A clever hairdresser could spread more secrets in a morning than a scribe could copy in a week. Imagine a forbidden love letter coming to life as pins clicked into place, scandal and curls intertwined. Let's be honest, you wouldn't last a day in this world. By lunchtime, you'd be thoroughly out-gossiped. Your attempts at braiding would look like a bird's nest after a storm. If you tried to embroider, your stitches would resemble a map of Constantinople drawn by a drunk sailor. And forget about keeping secrets. You'd start to tell one and lose your train of thought halfway through, leaving everyone staring while you mumbled, where was I going with this? Within hours, you'd be caught sneaking sweets from the serving tray and forever branded as the baklava bandit of Byzantium. The Empress herself sits among the women, her face a masterpiece of composure. Her embroidery is neat enough, but her true artistry lies in her expressions, amused at just the right moments, impassive at others. Only you notice the fleeting glance she shares with a trusted lady-in-waiting across the room. A barely perceptible nod confirms what cannot be spoken aloud. The letter has been sent, and a reply is eagerly awaited. The chatter of the women weaves a tapestry of distraction. One hums a melody from the countryside. Another jokes about a courtier's ill-fitting robes. A third complains about the quality of imported spices. But beneath the laughter lies a framework of loyalty. They are aware, they are involved, they are protective. The Empress's secret is theirs, hidden like an extra stitch between the threads of conversation. Historians still argue about the role of servants in the harem. Were they silent shadows or active participants? Chronicles often omit their names, but fragments of evidence survive. A maid who warned her mistress of a plot, a nurse who smuggled medicine, a laundress who carried messages tucked into freshly pressed linens. The gaps in our historical knowledge are not empty. They're filled with the unrecorded voices of those who saw and heard everything. A servant enters the room with a tray of dried fruits. She sets it down, gives an almost imperceptible nod to the Empress, and lingers just long enough for one of the ladies to murmur, "The roses are in bloom." To anyone else, it's a casual comment about the garden. To the Empress, it means her letter has safely reached its first destination. The Empress threads her needle with crimson silk, her lips tightening for just a moment before relaxing into a serene smile. To all appearances, nothing matters more than the intricate flower she's stitching. But you sense the quickening of her pulse, like a hidden drum beating beneath the calm surface. Here's an odd bit of trivia. Some believe that certain knots sewn into fabric could trap secrets. Women would sometimes tie threads into specific patterns meant to confuse any spirits trying to eavesdrop. Perhaps the Empress's embroidery contains such knots, her passionate longings disguised as pious symbols. But let's be real, if you tried to tie those secret knots, you'd probably tangle the whole thing into a mess that would make Byzantine seamstresses weep. Best to keep your hands folded politely in your lap and pretend you're fascinated by the pattern of the floor tiles. The room grows warmer as more candles are lit. The hum of conversation swells, and a burst of laughter masks the next whispered message. The Empress smiles, her needle rising and falling in a steady rhythm, and you realize that this perfumed chamber, filled with women's voices and the click of embroidery hoops, is as fraught with intrigue as any war room. Here, power is stitched into the very fabric of daily life, woven into laughter, and folded into the pleats of elaborate gowns. Somewhere within the harem's network, a reply to the Empress's letter is already taking shape, not yet written down, but alive in the words of allies who will ensure her heart's desire does not go unanswered. And you, half lulled by the soft murmur of gossip and the gentle tapping of embroidery needles, understand that the Empress is far from alone. Her secret longing beats within a chorus of women, every whisper another thread in the intricate tapestry of her forbidden's love. You wander deeper into the palace, and the air grows heavier, as if every step treads across the Emperor's shadow. His presence is not confined to the throne room. It stretches into every corridor, every whisper, every glance over the shoulder. Even when the man himself is absent, the idea of him sits in the corner of the room like an extra torch, flickering hotter than the rest. In the Byzantine Empire, emperors were often imagined as semi-divine beings, anointed by God and central to the order of heaven and earth. Elaborate ceremonies framed them as cosmic anchors crowns descended on pulleys of gold, while choirs thundered verses equating them to the sun and stars. Yet beneath this celestial veneer, emperors were also men with suspicions, tempers, and sometimes poor digestion. An empress who dared to pen a forbidden letter lived beneath both masks, the glowing sun king and the irritable husband. You catch a glimpse of him at vespers, standing tall in jewel-encrusted robes, his beard forked like marble sculpture. His crown glitters in the candlelight, but his eyes dart more quickly than his lips move in prayer. He is a man who knows betrayal does not knock politely. It slips through the smallest cracks. And he is married to a woman who, just yesterday, slipped a parchment under her veil. Historians still debate whether Byzantine emperors truly loved their consorts, or viewed them mostly as dynastic furniture. Some chronicles gush about devotion sharing thrones, sharing prayers. Others mutter about jealousy, paranoia, and accusations flying like arrows across supper tables. In either case, a suspicious emperor posed a danger not only to his wife, but to anyone who dared breathe near her. Paranoia sometimes took peculiar forms in the imperial court. One emperor reportedly banned cucumbers at banquets after hearing a prophecy about treachery growing on a vine. Another refused to sleep in the same bed twice, convinced assassins studied his habits. Imagine an empress hiding letters while her husband banished vegetables from the menu. The absurdity doesn't lessen the danger. Let's be honest, you'd fare poorly under such scrutiny. The moment someone asked, Where were you yesterday at the third hour? You'd panic, blurt, embroidery club, and expose yourself even if you'd been innocently napping. You'd probably be banished for accidentally sneezing at the emperor's feet. If handed a cup of wine, you'd nervously swap cups with the emperor himself, sealing your doom. And in a misguided attempt to avoid suspicion, you'd likely start humming loudly, which in Constantinople is exactly how people get noticed. The empress feels this shadow constantly. Every time she dips her pen, she hears the imagined echo of his footsteps. Every time she touches her sleeve, she sees his crown glint in memory. Even her laughter is measured, weighed against what an imperial spy might report. To be in love under such a shadow is to live like a candle in a storm-delicate, flickering, but still burning stubbornly. She sits beside him at supper, silver platters steaming with lamb and honey cakes, cups of spiced wine gleaming in lamplight. The emperor speaks of tax revenues from Anatolia, of treaties with distant princes, of the need to repair a seawall. She nods, replies, smiles, but inside she counts the beats of her own heart, timing them against the silence between his sentences. When his eyes narrow briefly at a servant who spills broth, her stomach clenches. If he suspects betrayal in spilled soup, what would he do with proof of love folded into time? Historians still argue whether some emperors staged elaborate traps for their consorts. Chronicles whisper of intercepted letters, of forged notes used to provoke confession, of lovers exposed and executed. But the records are often colored by propaganda, painting empresses as wanton to justify their downfall. Was it paranoia or genuine conspiracy? The line is blurred, and the truth, like so many parchments, has crumbled at the edges. Yet the empress writes anyway. Her defiance is quiet, but profound. To keep a secret heart beating inside the iron cage of ceremony. To write, I remember, even as the emperor prays aloud for order and obedience. You watch her smile politely at him, her hand resting lightly on the table, while beneath her ringed finger, a pulse of defiance drums against the wood. Some Byzantine astrologers claim to chart not only an emperor's fate, but the harmony of his marriage by measuring stars on their wedding night. If the sky promised discord, courtiers braced themselves for storms. Tonight the stars above Constantinople glitter indifferently, offering neither warning nor comfort. Yet to the empress, their cold gleam might look like punctuation marks in a story only she dares to write. The emperor rises from the table, his robe heavy with jewels, his shadow spilling across marble like ink across parchment. The empress rises too, bowing, the perfect consort. But you, trailing behind her, see the tension in her shoulders, the careful balance of love and fear. The emperor's shadow is always there, stretching into her chambers, seeping into her prayers, brushing the edges of her forbidden letters. And yet she writes. That is the defiance. That is the miracle. A single woman pressing ink into parchment against the gravity of an empire. In the dim light of her private chamber, the empress unfolds a small piece of parchment, her fingers trembling slightly. The words are few, but each one carries the weight of 1,000 unsaid things. She reads them again and again, committing them to memory before she must destroy the evidence. Outside, the city sleeps, unaware of the silent rebellion taking place within the palace walls. The next morning, as the sun rises over the Bosphorus, the empress joins the emperor for the daily ritual of receiving petitioners. She sits beside him, her face a mask of serene attention. But beneath the folds of her silk gown, her hand clutches a tiny scrap of parchment, the last remnant of her secret correspondence. As the emperor pronounces judgments and grants favors, she feels the rough edge of the paper against her skin, a constant reminder of the world that exists beyond his shadow. Throughout the day, the empress moves through the palace like a ghost, her steps light, her voice measured. She participates in ceremonies, offers prayers in the chapel, and oversees the household with impeccable grace. But her mind is elsewhere, replaying the words of her forbidden letter, imagining the hand that penned them. In fleeting moments of solitude, she allows herself to close her eyes and remember, savoring the taste of a love that defies imperial decree. As night falls, the Empress retires to her chambers, dismissing her attendants with a wave of her hand. In the silence, she retrieves a small vial of invisible ink, a gift from a sympathetic alchemist. With practiced care, she begins to write, her quill moving swiftly across the parchment. The words flow from her heart, a torrent of longing and hope that would shake the very foundations of the empire if discovered. Just as she finishes, a knock at the door startles her. The emperor's voice, muffled but unmistakable, calls for entry. In a heartbeat, the empress conceals her writing materials and composes herself. As the door swings open, she turns to greet her husband with a smile that betrays nothing of the storm within her heart. And so the dance continues, day after day, night after night. The empress moves through a world of glittering surfaces and hidden depths, her every action a careful negotiation between duty and desire. In public, she is the embodiment of imperial dignity. In private, she is a woman who dares to love beyond the boundaries set by throne and altar. You watch her navigate this treacherous path, marveling at her strength and cunning. In her, you see the silent resistance of countless women throughout history, those who have loved and lived and dreamed in the shadow of power. And as you drift off to sleep, lulled by the whispered tales of Byzantine intrigue, you wonder about the untold stories that lie buried beneath the weight of crowns and empires. You feel the city tilt, just a degree, the way a ship does when a wave catches it unawares. A rumor has started walking. It wears silk slippers and a knowing smirk, and it moves faster than any royal messenger you've met. You can't see the letter now folded, read, hidden away, but you can see what letters do to a city built on whispers. A spice merchant tells a stable hand that rose shipments have been unusually large. The stable hand repeats it to a charioteer as if he's discovered a new star. By noon, a scribe in the forum reports that the emperor has taken an interest in perfumes, which, in Constantinople, is like tossing a coin into a fountain of gossip. The hippodrome crowd did not only cheer races. They chanted politics. Blues and greens used their voices to petition the emperor and to mock his decisions, sometimes with verses sharp enough to cut through imperial propaganda. In 532, the Nika chants swelled from complaint to catastrophe of factions united. Anger ignited, and days of rioting followed until imperial troops quelled the revolt and the hippodrome fell silent with a terrible stillness. No blood here tonight, just the quiet note. When rumor and resentment join hands in this city, the stones remember. You pass the colonnades where vendors hawk fruits and fresh opinions. A woman buying pomegranates asks whether the empress seemed distracted at morning prayers. A clerk swears he saw a rose petal on a seal that was not ceremonial, not this time. A palace guard keeps a careful blank face and then repeats the pomegranate woman's sentence to a friend later over wine, changing distracted to enamored because it makes the story juicier. You realize the arithmetic of scandal. Every retelling multiplies the intrigue by 2. Scholars still debate whether Constantinople's upheavals riots, processions that accidentally blocked palaces, sudden boycotts of markets, were orchestrated by nobles or brewed themselves from the city's social ferment. Was a rumor like ours planted by a rival household? Or does the city generate heat all on its own, given a whisper and a lazy afternoon? The argument is a favorite. Neither side wants to admit how much chance governs an empire. Advice from the masters of murmur. You don't shout a scandal, you simmer it. A poet in the Augustan recites a verse that praises loyalty so fiercely that everyone listens for betrayal. A jeweler offers rose quartz pendants like the ones our gracious emperor favors, which is nonsense and therefore irresistible. In a tavern, dice rattle like bones, while urchin claims that a boat with painted roses made 2 midnight crossings. No one verifies, because truth is the enemy of a good story. Reality check. You would try to correct one detail. Actually, roses can also symbolize secrecy and immediately become the least popular person in the room. Light joke number 1. In a city of professional gossips, you'd be hired as a secret keeper and still fail your trial period. Light joke number 2. You'd attempt to wait for evidence, and a vendor would sell you evidence in a bottle. Second press olive oil labeled 100% authentic. Light joke number 3. You'd decide to keep quiet cough, and the cough would be cited tomorrow as proof the emperor is allergic to the empress's new perfume. A page from the imperial offices slips by, fingers ink-stained, and whispers to a friend that a certain letter was copied thrice today, with ... unusual care. He doesn't say what's in it, because he doesn't know. But the word unusual is a spark that sets imaginations ablaze. Nearby, an icon painter murmurs that the emperor's robe seemed redder than usual at court, and another nods gravely, as if fabrics obey the heart's whims. Quirky tidbit. City dwellers wore little talismans charms etched with prayers against the evil tongue, sometimes tucked into hats or sewn into cloaks. Silence the slanderer, one common inscription pleaded, mixing Christian piety with older superstitious habits. You watch a noble woman touch her amulet while repeating the newest version of the story. Precaution, not repentance. Scandal loves architecture. Arches hold the echoes. The Forum's marble statues make excellent landmarks for I heard it here first. The hippodrome amplifies, and the baths ring music from rumor. Steam rooms produce certainty, the way they produce perspiration. A bather leans on mosaic and swears his cousin's tailor's sister saw a note pass at the garden rose. In steam, family trees grow like vines. You drift past the Senate House where 6 men tell the same story 6 different ways, and each feels more authoritative than the last because it wears a finer toga. One insists the letter contained poetry. One says troop movements. One claims a list of saints to be honored as a distraction, which is so elaborate it earns points just for creativity. A 7th man says nothing and is therefore judged most dangerous. Historians still argue whether certain secret histories, those infamous backstairs chronicles of emperors and empresses, preserve authentic whispers or manufacture them to settle old scores. Either way, they prove a custom. Byzantines archived scandal as faithfully as they archived law. Even slander got a binding. Scandal doesn't stop at the city wall. It purchases a ship's passage. Across the sea, a minor official in Thessalonica hears that an embassy from an eastern court hesitated to approach the emperor, out of respect, which a translator dutifully renders abroad as out of fear. And now you've got a diplomatic breeze. A prince scheduled to visit for negotiations writes that he prefers to delay until autumn, meaning until the air clears, and a southern queen wonders aloud whether trade talks should wait. Words wobble alliances without ever naming them. Historical fact to anchor the mood. In 1042, Empress Zoe's husband Michael V attempted to exile her. Within days the city revolted. Chroniclers swarmed with accusations and justifications. Some told it as tragedy, some as justice. We will not reenact the drama. We note the pattern. The empire could pivot on a rumor's edge. Our emperor knows this pattern by heart. He writes as if every letter might become a decree. City officials try to settle the dust. A proclamation praises the emperor's wisdom in sentences that sound like someone reading a list of virtues from a textbook. The curious feel confirmed by the tone alone. A priest delivers a sermon on guarding the heart, which everyone enjoys for its obvious applicability to their neighbor. The more the palace says, "Nothing amiss," the more the crowd leans as if a secret were about to be revealed. Meanwhile, the hippodrome hums with anticipation. The blues have prepared a clever verse about roses and thorns. The greens have a chant that can be adjusted on the fly to mean, "May love bloom," or "May love be pruned," depending on how daring they feel when they see the imperial guards. You step into the stands and feel the place inhale. Chariots thunder, banners wave. Between races, the chants rise first as jests, and as hints, then as a challenge. The emperor's brow furrows. The empress's veil does not stir. A herald raises 3 fingers. The chorus changes key and pretends it was always about grain prices. Reality check again. Placed among these factioneers, you'd cheer at the wrong moment, accidentally invent a third party called the Purples, and be politely escorted out by men who have never once been purple. You'd also attempt a supportive nod and end up looking like someone who misplaced an empire. Quirky fringe, because the city always supplies one. An old man at a street corner offers a bowl of water in which he has scattered rose petals and bits of parchment, reading their drift for omens about the Lord in scarlet. People lean in, half mocking, half hopeful for any prediction. The petals circle thrice, sink once, and he declares, passion, but fleeting. Merchants nod as if they've adjusted their ledgers accordingly. As afternoon leans toward dusk, the rumor reaches a convent on the Golden Horn. A letter comes back, as letters do when nuns reply to scandal, with a parable about roses, how they bloom in secret, how they prick, how the garden survives the season's frost and still makes oil for anointing. The abbess's point is wisdom, not intrigue. Yet in the palace, a scribe copies the rose paragraph into a draft edict because it sounds poetic without saying anything. The city buzzes with the metaphor for an hour before a wine seller edits it into a bawdy song. In the emperor's chamber, the doors close softly. He feels the vibration the way a spider feels a web tremble. Between duties and diplomacy, he knows the score. A letter touched lips, and now the lips speak. He cannot command the wind, but he can choose his next move. He reaches for parchment again, not to confess, not to deny, but to redirect. You watch the ink bloom on vellum. The gold-ruled lines gleam faintly in candlelight, the signet ring cool against wax. If a city wants a story, he will write one that endures. And you, walking the streets in the indigo hour, hear the rumor tire itself, as rumors do. A fountain's splash fading to a trickle, a chant failing on the 5th repetition. Constantinople sets its table for night. Lamps are lit. Shutters are closed. The scandal will either settle into tomorrow's footnote or sharpen into tonight's headline. For now, the rose in the garden lifts its petals in the evening air, and for a moment the city forgets to speculate and remembers to dream. The letter's journey slows now, like a fading echo in an ancient hall. You drift through chambers where archivists and scholars alike debate, sometimes with themselves, about which fragments of parchment deserve preservation and which must succumb to oblivion. The forbidden words of an empress hover on that precarious edge between memory and dust. History whispers a harsh truth. Countless Byzantine documents are lost to time. Fires, invasions, careless hands, or deliberate destruction have thinned the shelves of knowledge. When the Fourth Crusade stormed Constantinople in 1204, entire libraries were consumed by flames or carried away as plunder. The treasures that remain chronicles, sermons, manuals of ceremony are often only the polished official voices. The whispers, the personal hearts folded into letters, rarely survive the relentless march of centuries. You watch a clerk lift a bundle of documents tied with faded ribbon. Some he meticulously copies into a ledger, neat rows of minuscule script marching across pristine vellum. Others he sets aside for reuse, scraping their surfaces until old words fade like ghosts. Perhaps one of the Empress's notes suffered such a fate her passionate metaphors dissolved beneath a dry sermon or a mundane budget table. Yet sometimes the page rebels against erasure. It scratches refusing silence, and a later scholar tilts it toward the light to read 2 voices at once, separated by time but united on parchment. Historians still argue whether fragments of love letters attributed to certain empresses are genuine or later inventions by gossipy scribes with vivid imaginations. A scrap of Greek verse, found tucked away in a margin, speaks of a flame that burns brightest in secret. Was it part of our empress's hand, a coded message to her lover, or simply a pious metaphor about faith's endurance? The ambiguity is both frustrating and intoxicating. You will never know for certain, and that is why you lean in closer, straining to hear echoes of a long-silenced voice. In a quirk of preservation, monks sometimes bound scraps of parchment into new books as filler in the spine, padding beneath leather covers. Centuries later, restorers find those fragments and read lines no one was meant to see again. Imagine a hidden love note propping up a volume of stern theology, passion literally stitched inside doctrine. Byzantium had a sense of humor that way, its secrets nestled in the most unexpected places. You'd make a terrible archivist, wouldn't you? You'd keep every scrap, muttering it might be important, until the library looked like a hoarder's attic of forgotten words. You'd preserve shopping lists because historians in 1,000 years might want to know the price of figs in the reign of Justinian. You'd get distracted doodling cartoons of grumpy eunuchs in the margins of official decrees. Worst of all, you'd try to correct a text and end up inserting modern slang, scandalizing scholars for generations to come with anachronistic declarations of totally rad imperial edicts. The Empress herself never sees this archival debate that stretches across centuries. To her, each letter is urgent, alive, glowing with risk and passion. But you, floating across the vast expanse of time, see the longer arc. A wax seal cracked, a parchment folded, an herb dried between pages as a keepsake. These small bodies either dissolve into nothingness or endure against all odds. And sometimes endurance comes by sheer accident. A scribe too lazy to scrape a page clean, a chest overlooked during a frenzied raid, a letter stuffed behind a cabinet and forgotten until monks sweeping centuries later grumble at the unexpected dust. You peer into a dimly lit scriptorium where an apprentice, eyes heavy with fatigue, leans too close to the guttering candle and scorches the edge of a parchment. The page curls like a roasted fig leaf, but most of its words survive the near disaster. Is that how one of her letters might reach us, damaged, half-legible, singed yet stubborn in its refusal to be silenced? Historians know this pattern well. Our picture of the past is a jigsaw with too many missing pieces. The Empress's voice, just one of the countless vanished corners we struggle to reconstruct. A quirky fringe story circulates among scholars. A tale tells of a pious nun who discovered fragments of dangerous correspondence tucked inside the lining of a revered icon. She supposedly scraped them away, whispering fervent prayers with every stroke of her knife. Yet years later, the ink bled faintly back through the gold leaf. Was it mere superstition? A case of shoddy restoration work? Or proof that memory resists erasure, that some truths refuse to remain hidden, no matter how hard we try to bury them? Historians still argue how much of history is truly remembered, and how much is careful reconstruction, imagination filling the gaps left by time. Do we chase the faint outlines of vanished words, or invent them because the silence of the past is too unbearable to contemplate? In the case of the Empress, we are left with whispers of whispers, oblique glances in dry chronicles, veiled metaphors in courtly poems, thinly disguised accusations in moralizing sermons. Perhaps her letters lived long enough to shift the delicate balance of imperial politics, then died in the flames of conquest or revolution. Or perhaps one or two still lie hidden, pressed into the binding of an anonymous codex in some forgotten monastery chest, waiting for a curious eye to decipher their faded script. The Empress herself, centuries gone, cannot answer our burning questions. She only leaves you with the lingering sensation of ink flowing from a trembling quill, of secrecy folded into the creases of parchment, of danger kissed into every line and sealed with wax still warm from the heat of Forbidden's passion. And so the fate of her letters becomes the fate of many Forbidden's loves throughout history. neither fully alive nor fully dead, but half preserved, half erased, lingering in a limbo that makes you lean closer, straining to catch the faintest whisper of a story left untold. As you drift through the shadowy archive, past shelves groaning under the weight of countless tomes and scrolls, you realize the greatest danger to her words was not discovery by her jealous emperor, nor whispers in the perfumed harem, nor angry chants in the raucous hippodrome. The greatest danger was time itself, that slowest and most thorough censor of all, eroding ink and memory with equal patience. And yet, hope persists. For as long as we remember that these letters once existed, as long as we search for their ghostly traces, a part of the Empress and her forbidden love lives on. In the end, perhaps that is the truest form of preservation, not in fragile parchment or crumbling stone, but in the endless curiosity of those who come after, still yearning to uncover the secrets of hearts long stilled. You drift out of the archive and into a twilight-bathed corridor where candles flicker, casting golden light on ancient stone walls. The palace sighs with the weariness of centuries. Courtiers retreat to their chambers, servants extinguish lamps, and the day's whispers fade into silence. Yet within these hallowed halls, one heart still beats with a forbidden rhythm. The princess sits by her window, her veil cast aside, her fingers tracing patterns on parchment. History remembers royal women in grand portraits and solemn chronicles. Their faces gaze from faded tapestries, eyes distant, crowns heavy with the weight of duty. But their private thoughts, their secret longings, these are lost to time, mere whispers on the wind. She gazes out over the misty gardens, where fireflies dance like fallen stars. Somewhere beyond those walls, perhaps closer than she dares hope, another soul yearns. A young nobleman, his sword laid aside as he pens verses meant for her eyes alone. A foreign diplomat, his heart divided between duty and desire. Or simply a man whose love outweighs the risk of discovery. Whoever he may be, he exists in her world as surely as the moon that hangs low in the sky, distant yet ever present. Scholars still debate the authenticity of her rumored correspondence. Were they genuine love letters, carefully preserved by those who understood their significance? Or were they fabrications, woven by later chroniclers to add spice to dry historical accounts? The truth remains elusive, lost in the hazy realm where fact blurs into legend. In later centuries, romantics claimed that messages written in lemon juice would remain invisible until held to a flame. While scientifically dubious, the idea captured imaginations. The notion that passion could lie dormant, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. Perhaps the princess's tale is similar, a story that lingers in the mind long after the physical evidence has crumbled to dust. Of course, you, nestled safe in your bed, drifting towards sleep, would be woefully unprepared for the intrigue of her world. You'd probably trip over your own feet trying to deliver a clandestine message. Or worse, you might address your secret admirer as your Royal Highness in front of the entire court. And let's not even imagine your attempts at writing poetry in a dead language. You'd likely end up composing an ode to your own elbow by mistake. The princess exhales softly, a sound barely louder than a butterfly's wing. Her hands fold carefully, and you sense the weight of words that have passed through them today. Somewhere beyond these walls, in a tavern, on a ship, hidden in a hollow tree, her thoughts now exist separate from herself. It is both terrifying and exhilarating. A gentle knock breaks the silence. A maid enters, curtsying as she places a tray of sweetmeats on a nearby table. Nestled among the delicacies is a folded scrap of paper, unmarked save for a single drop of red wax. The princess maintains her composure, dismissing the servant with a nod. Only when the door closes does she reach for the note with trembling fingers. She unfolds it carefully, revealing just 3 words: the rose blooms. No signature, no elaborate declaration. Yet her face softens, as if those simple words hold the power to wash away all her fears. This is how her memory endures, not in grand proclamations or official records, but in quiet moments like this. A fragment of hope, as delicate as spun sugar, yet strong enough to sustain her against the crushing weight of expectation. The forbidden's heart persists, defying time and convention. You hover closer, watching as she presses the note to her lips for the briefest moment before tucking it into the binding of her prayer book. Tomorrow it will appear as nothing more than piety. Tonight it is her lifeline. And you, balanced on the edge of slumber, realize that history itself is a prayer book filled with hidden messages. The official accounts are there, the dates and battles real, but so too are the secret longings, the stolen glances, the risks taken in the name of love. To truly understand the past is to search for those hidden truths, to listen for the echoes of hearts that dared to beat against the tide of their times. The palace grows still. Distant waves lap gently against the shore. The princess rests her head against the cool stone of the window frame, her eyes closed, but her mind alive with possibility. Her forbidden's love has survived another day. And you, eyelids growing heavy, carry a piece of her story with you as you drift toward dreams. The edges of the world grow soft now, the harsh lines of stone and duty blurring into gentler shapes. You no longer strain to catch whispered endearments or decode cryptic messages. Instead, you let the rhythm of the princess's steady breathing wash over you, as constant and soothing as the tide. Picture her chamber, bathed in the silver light of a waning moon. Shadows dance on tapestried walls, transforming stern ancestors into benevolent guardians. The day's intrigues melt away like mist before the dawn. What remains is a profound sense of peace. You feel it settling into your bones, your own breathing slowing to match the princess's calm cadence. The letters that once seemed fraught with danger now float harmlessly through your mind, like petals carried on a spring breeze. Whether they survive in some dusty archive or live on only in whispered legend matters little now. Here, in this moment between waking and dreaming, they are safe. Allow your thoughts to unravel like a spool of silk, each worry and tension releasing until you're left with nothing but the soft cocoon of approaching sleep. The weight of royal expectations has lifted. The prying eyes of the court have closed. Even the nightingales in the garden have stilled their songs. The world, at last, is quiet. You too can embrace that quiet. Let your breath become as steady as the princess's, rising and falling like gentle waves. Imagine her drifting into slumber, that precious scrap of paper tucked beneath her pillow, her heartbeat slowing as she surrenders to dreams. Her story, like yours on this night, has found its way to calmer shores. And as the last candle gutters in its holder, allow your own mind to dim, a flame banked low but never extinguished. The world beyond your bed can wait. For now, it is enough to simply float, carried on the current of a tale as old as time, the enduring power of a love that dares to defy the rules. The night settles in, a gentle blanket of darkness wrapping around you. As you prepare for sleep, let the worries of the day fade away like mist in the morning sun. We're about to embark on a journey through time, to a place where the present melts into the past, and reality blurs with dreams. Imagine yourself in a world long gone, where empires rise and fall like the tides of the sea. The Byzantine Empire, a realm of intrigue and mystery, unfolds before your mind's eye. The grand palaces of Constantinople, with their gleaming domes and towering spires, stand silent in the gathering twilight. As you settle deeper into your bed, feel the tension leave your body. Your muscles relax, one by one, from your toes to the crown of your head. The soft pillow cradles you, a cloud of comfort in this sea of tranquility. Now, let your thoughts drift to the Empress's chamber, high in a marble tower. The air is heavy with the scent of jasmine and rose, carried on the cool breeze from the Bosporus. The curtains billow gently, like sails on a calm sea. Through the open window, you can almost hear the distant lapping of waves against the shore. The Empress sits at her writing desk, quill in hand. Her face is illuminated by the warm glow of candlelight, casting flickering shadows on the walls. She pauses, lost in thought, then begins to write. The scratch of pen on parchment is a soothing rhythm, like the steady beat of a lullaby. These are no ordinary letters she writes. They are messages of forbidden love, each word a dangerous secret. But in this moment, as you drift closer to sleep, the peril seems far away. The letters are merely whispers of emotion, floating on the night air like dandelion seeds. Let your breathing slow, matching the gentle rise and fall of the curtains. In and out, in and out. The world outside fades away, leaving only this quiet room and the Empress's steady hand. She writes of stolen glances across crowded halls, of fingers brushing for just a moment too long, of dreams and desires that can never be spoken aloud in the light of day. But here, in the safety of night, they flow freely onto the page. As your eyelids grow heavy, imagine the ink seeping into the parchment. Each word becomes a part of history, a secret preserved for centuries to come. The weight of time settles around you like a warm, heavy cloak. The Empress finishes her letter, sealing it with a drop of wax and her personal signet. She hides it away in a secret compartment, safe from prying eyes. For now, at least, the forbidden words are protected. Your mind drifts further, carried on currents of sleep. The palace around you begins to blur, its sharp edges softening like watercolors in the rain. The marble columns seem to sway gently, as if they too are ready for slumber. In the distance, you hear the soft splash of fountains. Their steady rhythm is a counterpoint to your own heartbeat, both slowing as sleep draws near. Water has flowed here for centuries, witnessing the rise and fall of empires, the triumphs and tragedies of countless lives. Let that sound wash over you, cleansing away the last remnants of wakefulness. Feel yourself becoming as fluid as the water, your thoughts flowing freely and without direction. The day's concerns, once so pressing, now seem as insubstantial as mist. Court intrigues, political machinations, the constant dance of power and influence, all fade away in the face of night's quiet embrace. Even the forbidden love letters, once so fraught with danger, lose their sharp edges. They are simply words now, carried away on the currents of time like leaves on a stream. Whatever fate awaits them, whether they will be discovered, destroyed, or lost to history, is a concern for another day. Your body feels heavier now, sinking deeper into the mattress. Each breath comes slower, deeper, more relaxed. You are safe here, in this moment between waking and dreaming. Outside the palace walls, the great city of Constantinople sleeps. The markets are silent, the streets empty. Even the ever-present seagulls have tucked their heads beneath their wings, rocking gently on the harbor swells. In her chamber, the Empress too prepares for sleep. She tucks a small scrap of parchment beneath her pillow, a talisman perhaps, or a reminder of her secret love. As she settles into bed, her heartbeat slows, matching the steady rhythm of the sea. Let your own heart follow suit. Feel it beating in your chest, strong and sure, but unhurried. Like waves lapping at the shore, it carries you further from the waking world with each passing moment. The last lamps in the palace sputter and go out, leaving only starlight and the faint glow of the moon. Shadows deepen, but they are friendly now, inviting rather than threatening. They offer the promise of rest, of renewal. As sleep draws ever closer, allow your mind to dim like those fading lamps. Your thoughts become less distinct, blurring together like colors in a painting left out in the rain. It doesn't matter now what they mean or where they lead. Simply let them be. The world outside can wait. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges and joys, but for now, there is only this moment of perfect peace. You are drifting on a sea of tranquility, carried by currents older than empires. In this space between waking and dreaming, time loses all meaning. You could be in ancient Byzantium or in your own bed. It makes no difference. All that matters is the steady rhythm of your breath, the weight of your body against the mattress, the quiet of the night around you. The Empress's story, like your own journey tonight, has reached a gentler shore. Whatever trials and triumphs await in the light of day, they are distant now, separated from you by the vast ocean of sleep. Let yourself float on that ocean. Feel the last tendrils of consciousness slipping away, like sand through an hourglass. There is no need to hold on, no reason to resist. Sleep is waiting to embrace you, to carry you to realms of rest and restoration. As you hover on the very edge of slumber, take one last deep breath. Feel your lungs expand, then slowly release. With that breath, let go of any remaining tension, any lingering thoughts or worries. The forbidden love letters of the Byzantine Empress fade into legend, their secrets safe in the mists of time. And you, dear listener, fade into sleep, your own stories and secrets set aside for another day. Rest now in the knowledge that you are part of a grand tapestry of human experience. From empresses penning secret missives to everyday people seeking a good night's sleep, we are all connected by the universal need for rest and renewal. Let the night cradle you, as it has cradled countless others throughout history. Close your eyes, release your grip on wakefulness, and allow yourself to drift into the welcoming arms of sleep.